here at UJIA Scotland, and I would like to welcome everyone this evening to this UJIA Yom hazikaron ceremony. Firstly, may I point out the emergency exits. We have one here on the right, and we have one through the double doors at the furthest end through in the main hall. Could I now ask that everyone please puts their mobile phones off for the duration of the ceremony? Thank you. I would now like to call up Ricky Jackson to speak.
Yom hazikaron, the Day of Remembrance, is a powerful day in the Hebrew calendar. For one evening and the following day, we all stopped and remember those who lost their lives for the country of Israel. We think about the families that could have begun, the babies that could have been born, and the lives that could have flourished, and these tragedies not happened. In Israel tonight, communities are gathered to remember their sons and daughters who are no longer with them. All around the world, outside of Israel, our communities gather to remember the memory of our brothers and sisters who died for the future of the Jewish country. Every year, we have the same sharp transition between Remembrance Day for the fallen soldiers and the victims of terror and the Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut. This transition makes a person repeatedly change from sadness to joy, creating a sense of creation from destruction. Sometimes the sadness is so overwhelming that the transition to joy is too difficult to manage. There are families, friends, brothers and sisters for whom every day is a memorial day, and it does not end. Thanks to their sons and daughters, we are still alive, and Israel stays an independent state with its own rules, governments, army, and people. In Israel, tomorrow is a day of mourning. Everyone will dress in white shirts and wear the score stickers and their hearts in memory of the fallen. Schools will have ceremonies for the fallen IDF soldiers. Radio stations will play quiet and sad songs. Families and friends will go to cemeteries to stand next to their loved ones' graves. The street will be in total silence. You can feel in that atmosphere that someone is missing. We do not take for granted these soldiers. We are grateful to them forever. These brave people sacrificed their life for ours. May their memory still be blessed. Tonight, we will be honoring the memory of Nachshon Waxman and Nir Poraz, who lost their lives in October 1994.
Thank you, Ricky. Tonight, Israel experienced something incredible. Everyone stops what they're doing on the streets and in their homes. Traffic grinds to a halt, and both pedestrians and drivers stand to attention, silently contemplating sacrifices made for this country still struggling for survival. This eerie silence is broken only by the deep sound of the siren. In a few moments, we will also stand with the siren and think about our fallen soldiers and victims of terror, those who lived in the past to ensure we have our future. On the screen shortly, you will see exactly what one motorway looks like at this time. The siren will follow, and we will stand together with those on screen standing silently. After, Rabbi Wolfson will say the Yizkor Memorial Prayer, and then Rabbi Bodenheim will recite Kelmali Rachamim. If you'd all like to stand. ask you to please remain standing, and I'd now like to call up Rabbi Wolfson, who is going to recite Yizkor.
Yizkor Am Yisrael Esponov Uvenotav Hane'emanim Ha'amitzim Chayalei Tzva Hagana al Yisrael Chol Lochamei Hamachtarot V'chativot Halochamim V'arachot Ha'am Chol Anshei Kilat Hamodi'in Habitachon V'anshei Hamishtara Asher Charfu Nafsham B'melchama Ad Kumat Yisrael Chol Eila Shenirtzachu Ba'aretz U'michutz לה בידי המרצחים מארגוני הטרור. יזכור ישראל ויתברך בזרעו ויעבל על זיו העלומי. לחמדת הגבורה וקדושת הרצון ומסירות הנפש שנספו במערכה הכבדה. יהיו גיבורי מערכות ישראל עטורי הניצחון, חתומים בלב ישראל לדור דור. The nation of Israel will remember its sons and its daughters, its faithful and brave, the soldiers of the Israeli Defense Forces, and the members of the underground who fought in the nation's struggle, and all the members of the intelligence, security and peace forces whose lives were extinguished in the War for Israel establishment, and all those who were murdered in Israel and abroad at the hands of murdering terrorists. The nation of Israel will remember and be blessed by and mourn the lost splendor of its youth and their admirable courage, indomitable will and self-sacrifice, which was destroyed in the difficult and ongoing struggle. May the heroes of Israel's struggle, enveloped in victory, be ingrained in the hearts of the people of Israel for all eternity.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Wolfson. I'd now like to call up Rabbi Bodenheim to recite Kelmali Rachamim.
If I can ask everyone to sit down for a minute. I figured if I had this opportunity actually to say the Kelmali Rachamim, just to share with you in the next minute or so my experience and our experience living in Israel, growing up in Israel. I used to go to school next to Shuk Machane Yehuda, elementary school, and every morning when we wake up, when I was a teenager, it was actually when I was 8 or 10 years old as well, we would wake up in the morning and it would be, which bus blew up this morning? Was it bus number 18? That blew up twice. I remember going to school, actually going a bit late to school, and as I got to my school, I heard a tremendous explosion. About 3 minutes after where I walked by, I heard an explosion. That was an explosion of Shuk Machane Yehuda. The following year, as we're sitting down in school, there's suddenly 2 great explosions in Machane Yehuda, listening to the sirens, and seeing things I would not like to share with you either. Going through the years and we would always wake up in the morning and we would say, do we know anybody from the bus? Do we know anybody from the shuk? Do we know anybody from the mall? Do we know anybody from the mall? Do we know? And that was what we always kept on asking. And sadly enough, in our own family, there's someone that we knew that we were very, very close to that unfortunately got killed at a suicide bombing on a bus. And seeing all these soldiers, we always woke up in the morning after the different wars and different operations saying, who do we know? Because Israel is one big family. And no matter what background you come from, you always know somebody, or you know somebody. And living in the neighborhood we lived in, it was just a constant. Every morning, the big signs, this person was killed, his Levi's in this time. So I think Yom HaZikaron is that time that we really have to connect and recognize our nation and recognize Israel in such a personal way. Even though if we do have connections to Israel, if we don't have connections to Israel, we are all one big family. כמלא רחמים, שייכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, כנפי השכינה, במעלויס קדושים וטהורים וגיבורים כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את נשמת הקדושים שנלחמו בכל מערכות ישראל, במחתרת בצבא הגנה לישראל, ושנפלו במלחמתם ושנשמרו הקדושים שנרצחו בפיגועי טרור, ומסרו נפשם על קדושת השם העם והארץ בעבור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמתם, לכן בעל הרחמים מסתירים בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרה בצורה חיים נשמותיהם, אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם, וינוחו בשלום ונשכבם ותעמוד לכל ישראל זכותם, ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימין ונאמר אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi Bodenheim, for sharing some of your experience of living in Israel with us. Our first video tonight is about Nachshon Wachman. We are now going to watch a video about his life.
בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט.
Tonight we light a candle to remember Nachshon, Olivas Sholem. I'd now like to call up Ricky Jackson and her son Ben to light a candle. Thank you, Ricky and Ben. I'd now like to call up Alex Hyman, who is here this evening representing Habanim Dror Zionist Youth Movement, and is now going to speak.
We will now hear excerpts of a speech by Esther Waxman, Nachshon's mother. My name is Esther Waxman. I was born in a DP camp in Germany in 1947 to parents who had survived the ovens of Nazi Germany, in which their entire families had perished. We, my parents, my sister who had been hidden by a Catholic family during the war, and I sailed to America in 1950. I grew up as a child of survivors and became a true Jap, Jewish American princess. But the cloud of depression, of a deep sadness and melancholy, hung over our home. In typical second-generation syndrome experience, I was my parents' sole reason for existence. Their hope, their future, all their expectations were wrapped up in me. I knew without their ever having said anything that I had to be the smartest, the prettiest, the most popular, the most obedient, and best of all children. That was a tough burden for a little girl, a young lady, and later a wife and a mother to have to carry. I too demanded excellence and perfection of myself, and later of my children. In 1969, I immigrated to Israel, made Aliyah to Jerusalem, where I attended the Hebrew University, going for my master's degree in history, specialising in the Holocaust. My parents were Zionists, and their sole remaining relatives lived in Israel. I came to study with their blessing, though when I met my future husband and knew that only here in Jerusalem did I wish to raise my family, I'm not sure they were too thrilled. But I had caught the bug. I was going to be part of the history of our old/new homeland, and I would raise proud, independent, believing Jewish children in their homeland after 2,000 years of exile. I could no longer pray for the return to Zion and the building of Jerusalem when I knew I was a plane ticket away from fulfilling those prayers. And so I was married to Yehuda in 1970, and we had 7 sons between 1971 and 1986. Our sons were raised on a threefold love of their people, their land, and their heritage, the Torah. Our lives were complete, my dreams fulfilled, and I felt privileged to be able to live my life and raise my family in this, our sacred city, in this, our God-given land. My 2 oldest sons, named after ancestors, grandparents who had perished in the Holocaust, served in the Golani Brigade. When the time came for my 3rd son to be drafted, he wanted to outdo his 2 older brothers and volunteered for an elite commando unit of the Golani. His brothers mocked him, for he was shorter and slighter than the big staffing soldiers in that unit, but he persevered and became a soldier in the Orev Golani, and was the pride of his brothers, of his entire family. After having served in the army for a little over a year with 2 stints in Lebanon, Nachshon came home on a week's leave, Friday, October 7th, 1994, just before the Sabbath. On Saturday night, he got a call from the army informing him that the following day, Sunday, he was to attend a special course up north, where he and another soldier from his unit would learn to operate a special military vehicle and in a 1-day course receive a license. Nachshon found this offer very prestigious and got a ride with his friend to take the course up north. He left us late Saturday night and told us he would be back home the following evening. Nachshon did not come home on Sunday night. Perhaps because of my background with overprotective parents, I felt that I must know where my children are, when to expect them home, and they always notified me of any delay or change of plan. When by midnight Nachshon did not call or arrive home, I feared the worst. We notified the military authorities, we traced his movements, we spoke to his army friends. We discovered from one of them that he had been dropped off after completing the course at the Benai Atarot Junction, one of the most populated areas in the centre of Israel, where he could either catch a bus or hitchhike, as all soldiers do, to Jerusalem. This friend was the last one to have seen him. On Tuesday, we were contacted by Israeli television, who told us that they had received a videotape from a Reuters photographer showing my son being held hostage by Hamas terrorists. They said that they were coming directly to our home to show us the video before broadcasting it to the entire nation and the world. On that videotape, Nachshon was seen, bound hand and foot, with a terrorist whose face was covered with a keffiyeh, holding up Nachshon's identity card. The terrorist recited his home address, identity number, and then Nachshon spoke at gunpoint. He said that he'd been kidnapped by Hamas, who were demanding the release of their spiritual leader Ahmed Yassin from an Israeli prison, as well as the release of 200 other imprisoned Hamas terrorists. If these demands were not met, he would be executed on Friday, 8 p.m. At that time, I did not have the luxury of breaking down. We were all mobilised for the next 4 days, 24 hours a day, to do everything in our power to save our son's life. We spoke to Prime Minister Rabin, who informed us that he would not negotiate with terrorists, nor would he yield to blackmail. We announced Nachshon's American citizenship, and President Clinton intervened. Both Warren Christopher, who was in the area, and the US Consul in Jerusalem, Ed Arrington, went to Gaza, where it was believed Nachshon was being held, and brought us messages from Arafat. Arafat indeed called our home and told us that he would leave no stone unturned to locate our son and return him to us safe and sound. On Friday night, we ushered in the Sabbath, and I spoke to my son on the media and begged him to be strong, for all our people were with him. We sat rooted to our Sabbath table. My eyes were glued to the door, expecting Nachshon to walk in at any moment. We were not aware of the fact that Israeli intelligence had captured the driver of the car that picked Nachshon up. They had told our intelligence that the terrorists had all worn kippot, skull caps, that there were a Bible and Siddur on the dashboard, and Hasidic music playing on the tape deck, and an unsuspecting soldier got into the car. We were not aware that they discovered from their informant that Nachshon was being held in a village called Bir Nabala under Israeli rule, located about 10 minutes from our home in Ramat. We were not aware that Prime Minister Rabin had made the decision to launch a military action to attempt the rescue of our son. At the hour of the ultimatum, 8 p.m. Friday evening, General Yoram Yair, not Nachshon, walked through our door and brought us the terrible news. The military rescue attempt had failed. Nachshon had been killed, and so the commander of the rescue team, Captain Nir Poraz. At the same time, people had all returned to their synagogues after their Sabbath meal to recite psalms for Nachshon's rescue, including our sons. We called them home, and together we all sat frozen, unbelieving, shocked and devastated for the rest of the Sabbath. On Saturday night, at midnight, we buried our son. The entire nation mourned with us. Thousands came to comfort us, though no one can comfort a bereaved parent. Israeli radio began each morning's broadcasts with the words, "Good morning, Israel. We are all with the Waxman family." Food and drink were delivered non-stop to our home. Bus and taxi drivers who brought people from all over the country who wished to express their condolences left their vehicles and joined their passengers in our home. That unity, solidarity, caring, compassion, and love with which we were showered gave us strength and filled our hearts with love for our people. After the Shiva, we all returned to our routines. Our son, who had just gotten out of the army, attended the Hebrew University. Another went back to the army, 2 others returned to yeshiva, and the 2 youngest, twins, who had just turned 8 on the day of the funeral, went back to school. For that is what the Jewish people have always done. Rebuilt after destruction, began new lives from the ashes and blood of the old. I had a new respect for my parents, who had lost everyone and relocated to a strange land, a foreign tongue, and built a new family, a new life. I was in my own country, my own homeland. My son died wearing his country's uniform, and God willing, my other sons will serve their country proudly as well. For among my people I dwell, and that for me is still a privilege and a blessing. My threefold love of my people, my land, and my Torah has never wavered.
Thank you, Alex. Next we hear about Nir Poraz. Our final video this evening tells us about Nir Poraz, the captain who died trying to save Nachshon Waxman, and the story of Nir's father.
ב-15 באוקטובר הובא נחשון וקסמן לקבורה בבית העלמין הצבאי בהר הרצל. סרן ניר פורז נקבר בבית העלמין הצבאי בקריית שאול לצד אביו. פעולת החילוץ עליה פיקד זכה פורז לאחר מותו בצל"ש הרמטכ"ל.
Tonight we light a candle to a memorial candle to remember Nir Poraz. Tonight I'd like to ask Colonel Martin Gibson, formerly of Veterans Scotland, along with Ruth Kennedy, Director for Centre of Scotland and Israel Relations, to come up and light a candle. Thank you, Martin and Ruth. The decision to commemorate the fallen soldiers the day before the Day of Independence was not an easy one, but very symbolic. On this day, we remember those who gave up their lives so that we could celebrate the day peacefully. In one of the transition ceremonies between the Memorial Day to the Independence Day, David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, once said, "There is only one drop of consolation. Their lives and death weren't for nothing. And as long as Yam Yisrael is alive, he will carry their memory in his heart forever." I would now like to call up Sammy Steen to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, we gather here on this difficult day to remember those who have fallen in defense of the State of Israel. There are some who say that Yom hazikaron is a uniquely Israeli day. And there is truth in that belief, truth which comes from the special obligations and heavy price paid far too often by Israeli families when loved ones fall in defense of our homeland. Yet it is also a day when Am Yisrael stands together, shoulder to shoulder, to join our Israeli brothers and sisters in honoring the memory of those who fell in defense of the State of Israel and in acts of terror. We weep and deeply mourn together with the citizens of Israel as one family. And on this solemn day, we all mourn those who died in the service of Israel. We stand together in unity and mourn the loss of members of our people around the world. And how sad it is that these attacks still continue. Just a very few weeks ago at our Pesach Seder, we said, "B'chol dor v'dor omdim aleinu lechalutenu." In every generation, they rise up to destroy us. At face value, this seems like an appropriate line for the Middle Ages, certainly one that should have gone out after the Shoah. Yet even in these modern times, Jews are targeted by anti-Semites, specifically because they're Jewish. Today we stand as one, bowing our heads in memory of all the fallen. We salute the brave soldiers of the IDF and Israeli Security Service, who defend the State of Israel and the entire Jewish people at this modern and moment and every day. Today we remember those who gave their lives. We all owe them a debt of gratitude that we can never repay.
Thank you, Sammy. I'd now like to thank all the speakers for their participation this evening and for everyone that has come along to the ceremony. I'd now like you all to stand and we will sing Hatikva, after which tea and coffee will be served. Thank you.
O Lord, Benima, Nefesh Yehudi, Homia, Ufate Mizrach, Kadima, Ain Letzion, Sophia, Od lo avda tikvateinu, Ha'ikva bat shnot 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.